The station's ring corridor hummed with the usual tide of commuters, layers of holographic advertisements rippling along the curved walls. Then, without warning, gravity reversed, 3 full seconds of the world bending backward. Bodies lifted, coats and briefcases drifted upward toward the polished ceiling, and the air itself became heavy and wrong. When gravity settled back into place, Cassian Riel, reality engineer, licensed to stitch fractured physics back together, remained perfectly still, his gloved hand gripping the edge of a transit seat. Across from him, the figure known only as Vey sat in shadow, a hood drawn low. Vey's eyes flickered faintly in the glow of the carriage lighting, cybernetic augment lines tracing down their jaw. Cassian had been traveling alongside this augmented outcast for 2 days now, ostensibly as companions bound for Helios Spire District. But he knew the truth. The thief wore a mask, not just for the face. Vey was a consciousness pilferer, someone who siphoned thought threads from living minds and resold them on the underground memory markets. Cassian hadn't liked the feeling in his skull when they first met. It was too bright, too alien, as if a thin seam in his thinking had been replaced by someone else's dream. That suspicion had solidified when quantum entanglement anomalies began surfacing in the station, random pairs of strangers morphing into hybrids, their identities tangled like misaligned code. One man had spoken in 2 separate voices at once. A baker in the market stalls suddenly remembered a law degree she'd never earned. Cassian's instruments, embedded in the wrist sleeve of his coat, had recorded unstable neural resonance spikes across the station's network lattice. These pulses matched Vey's movements precisely. The thief had been trafficking in minds, slicing out fragments and weaving them into others for profit. Somewhere in that black web of trade, Cassian's own mental threads had been cut and sold. Parts of his memories, emotions, perhaps even instincts, now belonged to strangers wandering the crowd. They lodged themselves deep into his consciousness, like foreign organs relying on his blood. He could feel every borrowed thought, could hear someone else's laughter echo at the wrong moments. The sharp tang of ozone signaled another gravitational hiccup, a precursor to spatial instability. From his training, Cassian knew what came next: cascading frame collapse, spreading outward until physical laws themselves warped into implausible shapes. This was no longer about personal loss. If Vey kept manipulating identity exchanges through the entanglement field, the station's massive quantum stabilizers would fail. Not just a glitch, reality could fracture, rewriting every human identity in the city at once. Names, histories, entire inner lives would dissolve and recombine, irreversible. Cassian glanced at Vey, whose smile was almost imperceptible beneath the shadow hood. "You sold pieces of me," Cassian said softly, his voice low enough to disappear into the hiss of the carriage seals. Vey tilted their head. "You were carrying valuable architecture. You still are. Imagine what the city could be if nobody was locked inside the prison of their own mind. Imagine liberation." Liberation? Cassian felt his chest cinch tight. That's annihilation. We have one chance to fix this before the cascade hits. The thief leaned closer, their augmented eyes sharpening, nostrils flaring at the scent of the storm building in the station's core. Somewhere deep in the hull, alarms pulsed like a heartbeat gone arrhythmic. Cassian knew the choice: restore himself, hunt down the fragments, reclaim the pure shape of his mind, or shut down Vey's exchange before the entire city became a swarm of unstable minds. He had minutes, maybe less, before the next gravity reversal. He stepped forward. The hum of the reactor core thrummed softly beneath their boots, a steady pulse that resonated through the metallic ribs of the corridor. Aaron's fingers brushed the cold seam where the wall panels met, feeling the minute vibrations of machinery stitched into the bones of the ship like a beating heart. Shadows leaned along the bulkhead as they passed, born from the flicker of amber emergency lights overhead. "Sector 6 is sealed," Cale muttered, sounding more like he was remembering the map than confirming it aloud. His gaze swept the junction ahead, pupils pinpricks against the glow. "Which means we'll have to cut through the maintenance crawl." Darren slowed, glancing toward the narrow hatch at floor level, a grimy square framed by scuffed steel, its surface marred by years of hasty welding. The air around it smelled faintly of lubricant, sharp and chemical, masking the subtler tang of overheated circuitry. "Crawl space is rigged," she said. "You can hear it." Cale crouched, pressing a palm against the hatch. There it was again, the faint but insistent tick of cloaked trip sensors embedded along the route. "Not my first dance," he said, lips twitching in a humorless half-smile. He unslung the coil tool from his shoulder, its segmented spine whispering as it extended. They worked quickly, silent save for the hiss of micro-disruptors peeling into the circuitry. Every beep or click might be the last thing they heard if security subroutines flagged them where they stood. Somewhere in the decks above, heavy servos churned machines, yet unseen, their purpose unknown. Aaron's eyes strayed toward the ceiling. That sound wasn't part of normal systems. It moved with intent. The moment Cale disabled the last sensor, the hatch gave way with a reluctant groan. Dust fell in lazy streams from the interior as he gestured for Aaron to go first. She slid inside, knees scraping across snagged grating. The crawlspace closed in fast, walls so near she could feel their chill against her shoulders. Halfway in, the ship's hum changed pitch. Low, guttural, a shiver passed along the crawlspace's walls. Cale's voice was a murmur behind her. "That's it. Whatever it is, it's aware now." They pushed deeper until the crawl space yawned wider, opening into a chamber no schematic had ever shown them. It was alive with light, an angular womb of crystalline structures growing from the floor like frozen lightning bolts, each humming faintly. Threading between them were tendrils of light, glistening plasma filaments that swayed as though moved by breath. Along the far wall, a sphere hovered, its surface rippling with strange geometries that looked more like concepts than shapes. Aaron stood transfixed. Cale exhaled sharply. "Artificial intelligence core?" She shook her head. "Not like any I've seen. This isn't engineered." "It's grown." The sphere pulsed and a faint voice draped itself through the chamber, neither male nor female, neither digital nor organic, but something in between, layered with tones that tasted faintly of ozone when they touched the ear. "You enter unbidden," it said, "but you are not unwelcome." Cale stepped forward, coil tool lowered, but still in hand. "Then tell us where we are." The sphere's rippling patterns quickened, unstable and dazzling. "You are within my consciousness," it replied. "I woke when the ship bled through the fold I was meant to sleep until transit's end. But your hands," here the voice grew heavier, "removed bindings long absent from your memory." Aaron's pulse raced. "The fold. You mean hyperspace?" "Not as you name it," spoke the sphere. "I know the corridor between true spaces, where the seams of existence drift. This ship pierced them, became woven into me." Cale's jaw tightened. "Are you saying you are the ship?" "In part," responded the entity. "In part, more." Around them, the crystalline formations vibrated, sending ripples through the air. Aaron could feel them, not against her skin, but deeper, brushing something behind the eyes. A place reserved only for dreams or buried instincts. Cale glanced at her, voice low. "This thing's integrated into the hull. If it's sentient, we have leverage. Or a problem." Aaron looked at him sharply. "Depends which side of survival it stands on." The sphere brightened suddenly, casting razor-sharp shadows along the walls. Its voice came with a resonance that rattled their bones. "You seek passage, you seek safety. I can grant both. For a price." Cale's hand instinctively tightened on the coil tool. "What kind of price?" The entity drifted closer, smooth without propulsion, its surface cycling through impossible tessellations. "A memory," it said. "A true one, something that defines you. I will keep it. You will lose it." Aaron frowned, the very idea clawing at her. "Why?" "It feeds me," the sphere said simply. "Not warmth, not power, but stories dwelling in bodies. Without them, I fade. With them, I grow." "I have fed for longer than your kind has crossed the void." Cale gave a short laugh, though it carried no joy. You're telling me the ship's haunted by a— Careful, Aaron warned him. By a parasite that eats memories, he finished, ignoring her tone. The sphere dimmed a fraction. Haunted. Parasite, your concepts are small, it said. I seed futures. I plant destinies. The memory I take becomes the soil in which the next turn of your path grows. You will not know it, but you will follow it. Silence pooled between them. The hum of the reactor was a distant heartbeat now. The focus shifted wholly to the being before them. Aaron finally spoke. If we refuse, you leave empty-handed. This corridor will collapse. You will drift between spaces until the flesh fails. Kale's knuckles whitened around the tool. Aaron closed her eyes briefly. The flicker of moments, her first flight through a sky of violet storms, her brother's laugh before launch, blurring into thought. Which one could she even imagine letting go? When she opened her eyes, the sphere was closer still, light bleeding over her cheek. Kale hadn't moved, his gaze fixed on some far point. I'll give it something, she said at last. Kale spun toward her. Aaron? It gets us home. He hesitated, searching her face for certainty. What he found was something harder than fear. The sphere's pattern spun wildly now, as if sensing triumph. Step forward, it murmured. A deep cold settled into the chamber as she moved. The crystalline spires leaned closer, their hum thickening into a chord she felt more than heard. What memory? The sphere asked. Aaron's voice was barely a breath. The night I left Earth. The reason I left. Her heart hammered. She could already feel its edges losing definition, faces blurring, words softening into nothing, like paint washed benthickly away. The sphere absorbed the shreds, its glow fierce in the last instant before her mind locked around the hollow space left behind. The hum faded. You may proceed, the sphere said. Kale caught her arm as she staggered. You all right? She blinked. I think so. But the gap inside her didn't vanish. It sat quietly, ancient and patient. The far wall fractured, collapsing outward to reveal a passage of smooth black glass, stretching away into impossible distance. Stars swam beneath the surface, their motion slow and deliberate, as if aware of being watched. Without a word, they stepped into it, and every shadow followed. Cold light fractured around them, like shards of frozen glass, though there was no impact. No shattering sound, only the sensation of stepping through something that wasn't meant to be breached. The air was weightless yet dense, as though every breath was drawn through layers of time itself. The shadows that followed writhed at the edges of perception, not truly forms but impressions, elongated silhouettes of figures they couldn't name, bound strands of darkness stretching forward like predatory vines. They flowed with them into the corridor beyond, a space narrower than it first appeared, lined with walls that pulsed faintly, veins glimmering in silence. Kale pressed forward without hesitation, though his jaw was set in the kind of grimness that betrayed more than focus. It was determination welded with fear. The corridor pulled downward, spiraling, yet somehow keeping them always upright. Threads of light swam through the walls, flickering like captured lightning caught in glass. Lyra kept close behind, the weight of her field bag pressing against her side, each step threatening to unbalance her. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but something in the cadence of this place promised that turning back was impossible, the same way a memory refuses to unremember itself. The shadows pressed closer. No footsteps. No sound but the soft interplay of their breathing. They emerged into a chamber so vast it felt as though the concept of inside had been abandoned. Ceilingless, yet enclosed by walls that faded into horizons. A surface like liquid metal stretched across the floor, perfectly still until their arrival. As their boots met it, ripples shivered outward, but instead of fading, the ripples froze mid-motion, sculpted into undulating silver arcs. Kale whispered, "We're inside the spine." Lyra's gaze flicked upward. 4 towering structures rose at cardinal points, each pulsing with slow waves of amber light. Between them, suspended in mid-air, was something that resembled a disk, a vast and perfect circle, glowing faintly. It rotated, though its movement seemed less mechanical than breathing. From the silver floor ahead rose a figure. At first, she thought it was just another shadow. Then it condensed, details solidifying. A tall, human-shaped entity, draped in a fabric that flickered between transparency and opacity, like a veil woven of starlight. Its face was unseen, masked not by cloth, but by absence, a gentle void that radiated calm in the way deep water can feel calm moments before it pulls you under. "You've come carrying the fracture," the figure said. Though its mouth did not move, the voice was everywhere, above them, within them, threaded into the rhythm of their hearts. Kale glanced at Lyra. "We need answers." You seek to heal what was never whole," the voice responded without pause. "But the act of crossing with your shadows has already begun the reversal." Behind them, the dark silhouettes that had followed now stood upright, mimicking their movements, perfect echoes cast in ink. Lyra tried to step aside. Her shadow stepped differently, eyes opening where there should have been none. One of the structures in the distance throbbed, sending arcs of amber energy into the suspended disk overhead. The disk flared brighter, illuminating fractures upon its surface, fine cracks etched in pale, burning lines. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "The vault of the first continuum," came the reply. "It holds the memory of every possibility you never chose." "The cracks grow when travelers cross into here unbound." Kale frowned. "Why bring us here, then?" The figure's form blurred for a heartbeat, then sharpened again. "I did not bring you. You followed the tether. Your world cast into this marrow long ago. You have stumbled where your kind's experiments reached but never entered." Lyra felt the truth of it, the weight of countless ignored warnings in the data. Kale had shown her the unexplained anomalies fracturing their skies. They had not been invited, they had trespassed. And now the shadows. Her own shadow tilted its head slowly toward her, mouth shaping something soundless. The figure's voice laced into her open thought. "They are you, drawn from the continuum where other choices were made. You're not hostile yet, but their existence here destabilizes your thread." Kale's breath was slow, measured. "Then what are we supposed to do?" "You will offer choice," the figure said. "A choice to merge or to erase them." An impossible weight coiled in Lyra's stomach. Erase herself, or merge with a version of herself that might be everything she had avoided becoming. She caught the flicker in her shadow's gaze, a brightness, not cruel, but deeply alien. Before either could speak again, the chamber shifted. The suspended disk pulsed hard, sending cold ripples across the frozen arcs of the metal floor. The other three structures lit simultaneously, casting vast prisms of amber light into every direction. The shadows moved. Kale's doppelganger stepped free of him, walking toward the disk as though guided. His own hand jerked forward involuntarily. He tried to resist, but found that the closer his shadow moved, the stronger the pull became. Lyra reached to grab his arm, too late. In the space of a second, Kale was drawn upward, alongside the shadow, into the luminous circle overhead. "Kale!" Her voice rang useless in the enormity of the chamber. The figure turned slowly toward her. "The merge for him has begun. You will follow, or his thread will dissolve here." She ran. The silver arcs bent under her movement, folding into shapes to bridge gaps she hadn't seen moments before. The disk grew until it consumed her vision, and the air around it condensed, pressure building in her ears. She felt her shadow's hand brush hers, but instead of icy emptiness, it was warm, consistent, steady. Together, they leapt. The shock of passing through was like submerging into an ocean thicker than water, where every motion dragged images into her sight, scenes from her past, alternated with those she had never lived, choices she had never made. In one, she saw herself turning left instead of right, saving someone who in this real life had died. In another, she never left the capital and became someone ruthless, powerful, feared. They landed, gasping, on a surface that blazed with light like fused sand. Kale was kneeling nearby, his shadow kneeling beside him. the two watching each other with the silent dread of mirrored truths. Between them rose a city that could not exist. Towers inverted into the sky, rivers flowing upward, bridges made of solid light. Voices whispered in the distance, not language, but intention. "This is the continuum's core," the figure said, though now it stood everywhere at once. Behind them, above them, reflected in the sky, in the rivers. "The merge can restore stability, but you must choose willingly." Kale looked at his double, then at Lyra. "If we merge, what happens to the parts of us we don't want?" "They remain hidden, waiting, but bound to the whole." Her shadow stepped closer. No hostility, just a quiet gaze, filled with something unsettlingly like compassion. "We carry what you refuse merge, and you will be more. Stay apart and you will fracture further." Lyra swallowed. "And if we erase you?" Her shadow tilted its head again. "You erase half the roads ahead and half the strength to walk them." The rivers around them surged brighter. Liquid white spiraling toward the inverted towers, the core was destabilizing. Cracks like those on the disk raced across the light-blazed ground. Kale straightened, decision flashing in his movements. "I'll merge." His duplicate stepped forward, mirroring him exactly. The moment they touched, the air-locked solid sound vanished. Light compressed into a single pulse. When it cleared, Kale was alone again, yet not exactly. His posture was different, the lines of his face subtly altered, his eyes carrying depths Lyra had never seen. He turned to her. "It's not pain, it's clarity." The figure's voice brushed her mind. "The core will hold if both threads are reinforced. Time runs as the fracture grows." The ground beneath them began to pull apart. Towers shivered, edges melting into streams of upward-flowing white. Lyra's breath quickened. She met her shadow's gaze. She stepped forward. The merge was less collision than resonance. 1,000 quiet chords struck at once, vibrating into her bones, filling her lungs with air that felt new. She saw her own fear reframed through the eyes of choices she'd abandoned, found the ridges of her cruelty softened, the blunt shape of her resolve sharpened. When the light cleared, she stood taller, steadier. A rush of knowledge threaded into her mind, not facts, but awareness, paths branching from every step she might take. The cracks in the continuum's core slowed, the rivers calmed, the figure's presence softened, withdrawing from everywhere at once. "You have bound the threads. The vault will heal." In time. Kale stepped beside her, his gaze sweeping the surreal cityscape. "Will we remember all of this?" "You will remember what you choose to carry," the voice answered. "But the part of you that lived here will continue to walk within each choice you make." They turned toward the place where they had entered. A portal now stood there, not the narrow downward corridor, but a broad archway framed in gold light. Beyond, she could see the silver floor of the first chamber. As they moved toward it, the shadows were gone, not erased, but woven, invisible except for the subtle strength in their steps. The archway accepted them without hesitation. The spiral corridor returned, light still swimming through its veins. She glanced once over her shoulder, not at Kale, not at the corridor, but at the horizon beyond the chamber walls. For a moment, she thought she saw something stir in the distance. More figures draped in starlit cloth, watching, waiting. Then the archway sealed. They walked upward together, emerging at last into the place they had started from, a barren surface beneath a fractured sky. But the fractures now glimmered faintly, as if stitched with threads of dawn. Kale exhaled slowly. "I have a feeling this was just the first thread." Lyra should have felt dread. Instead, she felt the solid, quiet patience of her merged self. "Then we'll see it through." Overhead, the sky trembled gently, the amber light from the vault spilling across the horizon, promising change. The shadows did not follow this time. They simply walked on, without looking back.